If you're comfortable, you're not growing. Growing causes discomfort. Doesn't matter if you're growing your muscles, doesn't matter if you're growing your brain, it's uncomfortable. And then the second element to growth is urgency. Yeah, someday I want to go overseas and see this other country, and someday I want to learn this skill set. But if I said, hey, no, you have 1 year to go visit that country, or 1 year to learn that skill set, or a month to learn it, or whatever it may be, all of a sudden, everything changes. All right, we are live with another episode of Agency Growth Engine, and I'm really excited for our guest today. But before we go any further, please leave a review wherever you're listening. It really helps us out, and it helps us get the word out. And we need more reviews. We barely have any reviews on this show, even though we have thousands of people watching. We need people to leave reviews. It really helps us out. Take 10 seconds and do it. And today I have my friend Stefan on the show, and this is actually our first time talking. And I want to jump in. I want to talk about how we met and how we got connected. But before we even jump into that, you have an agency that's doing really well. Your projected revenue is about 1.1 million this year, and you had 32 team members. So first thing in my head, I'm like, holy cow, it's a lot of team members for that revenue. So how are you balancing that? Are those private contractors that you have, or part-time people? How are you managing that many team members at that revenue?
Great question. And, I just want to elaborate and thank you for having me on this talk show and podcast. I've been following along and, you're doing some amazing things in the world. So I'm looking forward to evolving this conversation with you.
Oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, taking an hour out of your day. You got a lot of other things you could do. So thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. So, jumping into that question, in the space that we're in social media at the end of the day. So when we are hiring, I would say the biggest thing that I look to for people is, how much can they actually take on? So obviously, aside from the talent itself, accounts that we manage, at some point they're going to hit a wall of capacity. So they can only take on a certain amount of accounts as they're operating throughout the day. And obviously, we have different clients that have different packages and different sizes and stuff. So each account manager, for example, as we label them, would have probably 5 to 6 counts maximum.
Oh
So,
wow, okay.
yeah, and so it's more of a hands-on approach in terms of the quality that we provide day in and day out for the clients that we serve. We're working with well over 100 clients now on a monthly basis, so it can quickly add up in terms of how many account managers we would need. And in terms of the structure, we do have full-time staff. About, I would say, 15 to 18 of the team members would be full-time staff. We do have part-time members as well. That helps with our community management team and our outreach team. And then, like you suggested too, contracting for freelancers from time to time when we do need some support or, some additional help from time to time on, some busy seasons or other projects that we might need some additional support as well on.
Got it. Okay, that makes total sense then. That makes a lot of sense. So let's start with how you got started. A lot of people want to start marketing agencies. I have at least 2 people a week that reach out to me directly and say, I want to start and I want to get into it. And that's why I started this podcast, and the community was, I realized there were so many people trying to start, and it's hard for them, right? It's almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts because there's so many options out there and so many different ways to do it. So how did you get into this, and what's kind of your origin story of starting your agency?
Great question. Yeah, I think for me, like maybe many, I started as a freelancer. So, I did my whole schooling. I took my MBA, and throughout that whole process, I was really keen on social media and just understanding it from a user perspective on how I could really help not only myself and my personal brand, but even like businesses at some point. So I think really evolving that space of social media and how it kind of intertwines to the marketing of businesses, that's really where I kind of found, I think, my passion for what I do today. So exiting school, fast forward to that, I was kind of, into the space of, okay, I'm in a job position. Let me find a job. Let me do my 9 to 5 thing. And on the side, I was like, you know what? I have a skill set that I could offer online. So I was like, I'm going to freelance and I'm going to offer my skill set to, a platform. And that platform for me was called Fiverr. So Fiverr, I'm now a pro seller of Fiverr, top 1% now. So that's something that definitely has allowed me to tap into the worldwide.
So you're still using that. You're still using that as a lead gen tool.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
That's awesome. Smart.
Yeah,
Really
definitely.
smart. So you had a 9 to 5. You're working just like maybe somebody out there is listening right now. They have a 9 to 5, but you had a skill. And what was that main skill? What was the main skill that you were helping people with?
Yeah, so there was two. It was actually presentation design. So I was helping startups basically get their pitch decks designed and optimized and ready
Bro,
to go.
I've literally hired people to do that before off of like different platforms. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's honestly an amazing thing. Obviously, we're living in this entrepreneurial era, like you suggested. People are looking to start their own thing, jump out of that 9 to 5, and really start their new passion project that can evolve into that 9 to 5 for them. So I think definitely Fiverr is a great outlet, or even Upwork. These marketplaces can really tap into like that global network of opportunity. And I think looking back into the real world, I was also open to taking on my first couple projects for free. I was really
Yeah,
grinding at
learning,
that
right?
time.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yep.
Implementing my grind, where I could add value to businesses and opportunities to build my portfolio. I think that's really the biggest thing as we start to, you know, evolve our next chapter of professional work or whatever that looks like to someone. Really kind of getting yourself in a position where here's the opportunity that I can create for myself. Even though if there's sacrifice, time, money, there might be some short-term sacrifices you may have to make. But at the end of the day, I think it's looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. I think the school of working with business is super valuable because for me, I didn't go to college, but I got to work with in real businesses with real people and I learned so fast. And then I see people who come out of college who don't have the skill set necessary to really make an agency work or anything, right? Like it's really hard to even get a job because the
Yeah.
skill set isn't applicable to what we have today and the problems that we're trying to solve today. So when you can get in there and you can get your foot in the door at a business, whether they're paying you like you said nothing or $100 or 1,000, whatever, just getting something and getting that going. Now, one of the areas that I know that a lot of people struggle with is going from that freelancer and quitting their job and starting that agency. How did you make that jump? Because I talked to a lot of people who struggle with that.
For sure. And, this is definitely something that is, one of those quotes where you jump and you develop the wings along the way sort of thing. Even actually, I think there's a great quote that one of my mentors also said is the decision is the key that unlocks the how. Sometimes you're not going to understand how to do it today, but once you make that committed decision, once you're ready to go all in, and you'll know when you're ready to go all in. For me, that all in was a little bit of stability in terms of my freelance. I was able to build that on the side and get to a point where I was making more on a weekend than I was in 2 weeks of work. So, for me, it was really a no brainer. I was, locked up
Yeah.
in my time and I was like, I got to make a decision. So for me, that was before my 24th birthday. I went on vacation. I recall, I made the decision even before then, before my 24th birthday, I'm quitting. I'm going all in on my agency. I told my parents, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And, for me, it was just not something I wouldn't look back on. Once I made that decision, I knew it was going to work regardless. So, I really think for someone who's just trying to get started or trying to jump into that, finding where that stability looks like for you, where you're ready to do so. And then when you are ready to do so, commit to it. Don't go half in, half out, commit to it.
Yeah. See, I'm kind of wired different. I had to jump all the way in. So I was comfortable. I had a good job, all those kind of things. And I just quit my job, started, and I just knew I got to sell this many this month or I'm not going to be able to feed my family. So
There you go.
but it's hard to live in that state of fear too. I get that. And the older you get, the harder it is as you get a family, you get kids or you get obligations, you get a mortgage. Every time you get something like that, get a bigger car note, it's harder and harder and harder to make that jump. So I was about your age too when I jumped in and started the agency. Now, where did you like how did you get to the point where it was now I'm hiring people? So you went from
Mhm.
freelancer, so you had a job, steady income, you're a freelancer, so now that freelancer is actually generating more opportunity for you than the actual your actual old job. So that's an easy decision. But then how did you move into man, okay, now I need to hire people because I'm not going to be able to manage this.
Yeah, I think even for what I do is I'm very much centered in what I do best. I'm very much playing to people's strengths. I'm a I would say I could definitely admit when I have weaknesses, which I think we all do. And we also, those weaknesses can be things that we don't necessarily like to do day to day, but someone you do find, they absolutely love it, and they crush it. So for me, it was really finding what I do and what I do best. So what that strength is for me, and then finding my who. So finding my who is essentially what I looked at as the next step when I was a freelancer. And that's really what also allowed me to bootstrap my agency today. Obviously the Fiverr money and the freelance money I was making on the side, it's really what allowed me to hire my first person, which I'm very happy to say she's still with me today. She's like my right hand person. Avisha. She's an absolute gem of a person in my agency and in what she does. Also, I would
And
say
what was her
for
position? She was your first hire, and what was her position?
first hire, she was graphic designer and account manager,
Got it.
a little bit of both. And then
Wow, that's a tough double. But sometimes that's what you got to do with your first hire, right? You're like, hey, you're gonna have to do these things that I need help with right now. How did she balance that? Because usually somebody who's good at graphic design isn't going to be good at the account management, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think the cool thing with these social media and platforms and these creative outlets is it really does allow those creatives to kind of tap into like the visual, the aesthetic, the appeal of how they come across with content.
Hmm.
Community is obviously critical to social, but we serve that through content. And the content must meet that standard of what that community is looking for. So I think that having those creative people on the team and the detail of level of design is also important. So I think it kind of did complement as well the area of field that she was also in. And, again, I think for me, hiring that first person, self-starter, someone who's committed, someone who's really kind of ambitious in terms of leveling up with me. I think buying into the vision of what I was trying to create at the time too is something that I was trying to convey and get across. And I'm very fortunate she believed in me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the way I look. I always tell people, thanks for picking us because you could go work anywhere, right? 8 hours out of every someone. When the way I look at it is if someone's going to come look at work for me, they're giving up 8 hours of their life minimum every single day away from their family, away from other opportunities. It doesn't matter if I'm paying them a lot or what some people might view as not as a lot. That doesn't matter. What
Yeah.
matters is they're choosing us, and that's a big responsibility. And when you first get started, that's scary. I know a lot of that. What you just described, that I'm freelancing to starting to hiring that first person. A lot of anxiety around that. A lot of fear. Are they going to think that I'm not good enough? Are they going to know? Are they going to realize all my deficiencies that I have? And all those things, right? All those stories we tell
Totally.
ourselves. And I still go through that. I still hire people. Sometimes I've hired people who have really high skill sets, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna recognize that I'm not good at this, right? They're gonna realize that it's a dumpster fire at this part of the side of the company. So that
Yeah.
that feeling for me doesn't really go away. What I have learned to do is kind of flip it around and go, okay, I'm gonna be transparent with this person and just say, hey, we're hiring you because I really need help in this area. And that's helped me more so than this was for me. I was kind of hiding it. You know what I mean? I was kind of I felt like I was hiding it at least. And now it's like, okay, how do I be as transparent and vulnerable as possible of where my weaknesses are, so that way
Yeah.
they can help me. So what?
I just want to jump in there too, because I
Yeah,
think that's such a great thing that you've just brought up is like being transparent with throughout that whole process. Because I feel like, especially during the hiring process or talent, it's like, they may be very well expecting something as well on the other side. But once you're able to be upfront and transparent with the role, what they're doing, where you actually can fit in that help, I think that's really where that relationship can start to build on. And there's really no expectation that's maybe, you know, not there to what they're hoping for.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's hard. That's a hard thing to do because we're taught fake it till we make it, right?
Mhm.
And that's actually what makes us successful at the beginning. Is I mean, think about it. You went and you had a job, you were doing whatever, and you were like, "No, I'm gonna go make something." And probably everybody around you is like, "You're crazy, man. You're not gonna make nothing, right?" And
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna make it." And in your head, you made something that was not real and you turned it into reality. So which is like a level of craziness, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
be a little bit crazy to do that. But and so there's a little bit of faking it until you make it involved with that, of just like, hey, I'm going to go out until I learn it. But then what happens is that what makes you really good at that thing, that technician thing, as you start to manage people, you actually have to turn that side of your brain off, and you had to say, okay, I'm not going to be that person anymore, and now I'm going to be vulnerable and transparent. And it's so hard to pivot between those two. It took me years to even figure out what that even meant and what it looked like.
If anyone is listening to this right now, I would definitely go back 15, 20 seconds right now and re-listen to what Gary just said, because that there is honestly so critical to understand. We will all face those challenges. I think I still do to an extent as well. And I think the reason why is because obviously everything starts from an idea, but the imposter syndrome, the fake it till you make it, I almost even look at it now as we're stepping into a new comfort zone and it's territory that we're unfamiliar with. So yeah, you're going to be challenged internally on, those paradigms, the, am I destined to this? Can I do this? Am I this person? Is it the hat that I should be wearing? And I feel like when you enter that new comfort zone, that new, territory of, oh, this is different, it's going to challenge you and push you into building that new self-image, who you really are to step into. So, I really think for anyone who's listening to this, we will all feel that. We'll all go through that imposter syndrome. If you feel like you are, the fake it till you make it thing, you're destined for greatness. So I can't wait to see what people do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've read the book E-Myth Revisited. It popped in my head as you were talking there, and it's really about a baker who loves baking, and that's a technician, they describe that as. And so it's just like a marketer. I was an amazing marketer. I knew how to do Google AdWords and make it do things that other people are like, you can't do that, and I'm like, watch, yes I can. And same with SEO. I was able to do things with SEO that people were just blown away with, because I would go in there and just play with it and break it until it did what I wanted it to do. And that's really good. But when I went to go manage people, I didn't realize that that's a different skill set. And that's what the E-Myth Revisited is about, is going from that technician to that manager is hard. It's a hard thing. And not everybody can do it. And you have to be self-aware to figure that out. So that was a big transition for me. Now for you, when did you start? Are you still doing account management? Are you still in the account management as well as others?
Myself,
Yeah.
I'm out of that now. So I've definitely hired the right people to get that done. If
Yep.
anything, there's maybe one or two clients that I really focus my attention to, and really give it my energy. But in terms of what I like to do now, it's the strategy, the high level stuff, obviously the business development as well. I think over the years, I've really evolved even my role. And one thing I probably have struggled with is maybe even giving up control. I think we all
Oh yeah.
struggle. Yeah, I love having a little bit of a say, a little bit of my piece to it. But I think, you said this as well. I think maybe a few posts ago, but you have to be willing to let your team fail. And I think that's such an important statement to understand is you're hiring them for a reason, whether that's for them to learn that success, that fail, that learning curve. You have to be willing to let them have that shot without you, supervising them, micromanaging them, whatever that looks like. You really
It's
have to trust
so
the
hard
team.
to let other people
Yeah.
fail though, especially when you
Yes.
when you have the answers.
100%. I'm totally with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. I have kids, and it's hard for me to sit there and watch them go through things where I know they're going to face heartache or difficulties, and let them fail at it because they have to learn. They're not going to die or anything, right? But it's just hard when you have the answer and you go, no, it would be a lot less painful to go this way, and you just have to let them do it. And it's same thing with your team. You have to let people fail and learn. I was the biggest bottleneck in our agency for a long time, because I would literally solve every problem, and then people would stop solving problems. And then I sat there and went, I hired the wrong people. They don't know how to problem solve. Nope. I was actually solving the problems. And what leaders don't realize when you do that, what from an employee standpoint, it's less risky. If there's something that I'm like, I don't know, I'd rather just come to Stefan and just let him decide. Because if he's wrong, then I'm not going to get fired. It's on him. And then the even worse than that is I'm not going to care if it works or not, because it's not my it's his thing. It's not my thing. So I don't have that ownership. So getting people to have that ownership and then letting them fail with that ownership, that's when the real growth comes, where they go, no, 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 I'm going to figure this out. And I stifled that for so long.
That's huge. No, that is absolutely huge. Such a great perspective too. And I even think along the way, like those individuals who are, maybe afraid to fail, it's, ask questions, don't be afraid to
Mm,
ask questions. I think ego can get in our way as well. And,
yep,
maybe our confidence of some sort, but, we're all still learning and we're still growing, even myself and yourself, I'm sure. So,
100%. Yeah.
to an extent, you definitely got to ask questions too if you're unsure.
Yeah, so one of our company Y is always growing. So we're always talking about we should always be growing, always be growing. That's you're not going to like working here if you don't like growing. And I started to really break that down in my head, like, what does that mean to always be growing? And there's two elements to growth. Number one, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. Growing causes discomfort. Doesn't matter if you're growing your muscles, doesn't matter if you're growing your brain, doesn't matter if you're growing a skill. It's uncomfortable, right? So there's going to be a level of uncomfortableness. So I tell the team all the time, guys, if you're comfortable right now, you're not growing and something needs to change. And then the second element to growth is urgency. So it's easy. I realize this about myself. Everybody does it where we go, yeah, someday I want to go overseas and see this other country. And someday I want to learn this skill set. And everybody's comfortable to talk like that because we give this long time horizon on it. So it doesn't really matter. It almost is like, yeah, we're saying it, but it's not something that we're pushing towards. But if I said, hey, no, you have 1 year to go visit that country, or 1 year to learn that skill set, or a month to learn it, or whatever it may be, all of a sudden everything changes. And now that time restraint changes how you think, changes how you approach it, changes how it starts making you prioritize too. Like, man, do I really want to do this? Is it really worth my time? Is it really worth the energy? So growth has to have those two elements in it. And I love that. I'm constantly challenging myself, like, where am I uncomfortable and where's the urgency? And if those things aren't there, then I know, hey, I'm not growing right now.
You raised such a great point, and I think even in line with the growth, it's setting goals, right? I think the goals aspect in, even one of my late mentors, Bob Proctor, he was saying, goals aren't to get, goals are to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I
I love
think
that.
it's so important because internally we always need to be setting goals for ourselves, whether they're short term, long term. And more than that, I think having that supportive environment like yourself, like your team, to keep everyone accountable, I think that's really the culture that allows us to grow. And it
Yeah.
doesn't stagnate our growth. You give the opportunity, you let them fail, or you let them kind of step into something new, or give them a new task or project. I think that's really the opportunity that people can really step into. And, they may surprise you too. They very well might, come back with, wow, I was missing this all along.
I've
And I,
surprised I think people surprise themselves too. I think we're capable, far more capable than what most people give themselves credit for. And then it's just where we focus it, right? Like, what do we want to focus it on? And are we having fun? Are we passionate as we do that? You said one thing.
yes.
You've gotten out of account management. So
Mhm.
it took me a long time to get out of account management. We were doing over $250,000 a month. So we were probably 3 times the size of where you guys are at right now before I figured out how to do that. So how did you figure that out so early on?
I think again, it's definitely all about giving up the control, and I think also finding the right people and more suitable people to take on that initiative. At the end of the day, for me to get to where I want to be, I know I have to remove myself
So
from
smart.
aspects.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think I've also battled that. Wow, like I am so jammed, I'm locked. I can't even meet people now. I can't even business develop. I'm so
Hmm.
stuck in the rut of the business, the day to day. And one quote that I have on my amazing wall here, I have like all my clients here on the side. It's, you should be building a team who can fulfill the mission without you.
Yeah.
And every day I just drill that in my head, and I know they're going to do great stuff. I'm hiring them, they're on my team, and at the end of the day, I'm there to support them with anything they need, even if that's posting something on an account, right? But I think at the same time, for me, in order for us as an agency to get to that next level, it's, I need to be prioritizing in other aspects of the business as well, and other facets, to really kind of improve the processes, the systems, the operations aspect. And really the account manager role is more of a day to day, kind of grind in the sense
It
like
is.
that.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
and I think for me, even like I said, I only have really 2 accounts now that I'm really kind of more like hands in still. But really, I think still evolving process for me to completely eliminate.
So yeah, I want to call something out here, and we can talk about it a little bit if you think it's a good idea.
Sure.
So you said business development and then account management. So just so everybody understands that if you own an agency, when you first start, you're just all into the agency. You're not really doing anything besides serving your clients, and that's all that matters. And that's all that should matter. But then over time, you start to get team members. And as you become an account manager, you become very engulfed in that world where you forget about the business because the
Mhm.
business is like separate from you. You're not the business anymore. The business is this functioning thing that's working in the background as you're doing other things. And if you're not careful, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm in debt $100,000 and we're negative every single month, or oh man, we just lost 3 team members. What's going on? I have no idea why that happened. And it's because you were working in the business, not on the business. And there's that transition that happened. And I figured this out way too late. Like I waited way too long and it was very painful because of that. And I wish I would have realized it earlier on that you can't be both. Like I couldn't be an account manager all day and then go and try to figure out how to grow the business later in the night. I had to step away from that. And you learning that so early on is huge. Like I think a lot of business people who maybe second, third business, maybe they figured that out. But for me, it was way later on. So
Mhm.
where are you at right now? How much are you
Yeah.
working on the business versus in the business, like percentage wise?
I would say it's probably like 70, 75, 25 right now in terms of business development, more of like hands on outside of the business, growing the operations, the procedures, the systems in place. And then, I would say 20, 25% would definitely be in the accounts, the strategy, the high level, client meetings, that kind of stuff as well. And, I think for me, one of the indications in that whole, I guess, revelation of where I should be and where I fit my business is we were like, I think you can experience this too, or you're related, is your clients eat before you do in a way,
Yep.
right? Like you definitely serve first before you serve yourself. And I think for me that indication was, well, why wow, we're posting all this great content on social for our clients, but like we're kind of struggling ourselves as an agency to even post, and
Yeah.
it's like we
Well,
got to come up with
have you
something.
ever heard of the cobbler's the cobbler's children's shoes? Have you ever heard that
No,
before?
no, I haven't.
Okay, so yeah, so what it is so if you're a cobbler, you make shoes, right? So all day you're making shoes for other people, but then your kids are shoeless because you don't have time to make shoes for them, even though that's what you do for a living. And it happens a lot to agencies. And it happens in all businesses where the thing that you actually offer as a service, you can't then go and do it for yourself because you're so busy doing the thing. And we still struggle with this where I need a website done and I need it for this marketing purpose. But our team is not set up to build websites for me. They're set up to build websites for dentists, which is totally different than what I need to market B2B, right?
Hmm.
And so sometimes that process is slow and it takes time and it's sometimes it's painful. It's not anybody's fault. It's because I'm busy making shoes for other people. That's why I don't have shoes for my kids.
And you know what? That's such a great way to hear that, because I haven't heard that before. But it's definitely a great way to relate, because I think at the end of the day we try our best to serve our clients with day in and day out with the quality as much as we can. And I'm in the retention game. I'm in subscription or retainers every month,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you got to retain plus grow. So it's like they are expecting that quality every single month that we're putting out, and rightly so. That's what we as an agency commit to. I think in that whole process of how we can continue to retain while the growth, I think that is definitely a challenge that I'm still even trying to, overcome and go through. And I think at the same time, it's fine tuning our process, fine tuning our sales pipeline or business development sort of strategy as well.
Yeah. What I finally had to do is just like build out a team that all they did was work on this thing and you're not
Done.
allowed to go touch those other things. And even
I
then that
love it.
sometimes didn't work as we got busy. There was times where I'd hire people to do a certain job and we get so busy that operations was like, "You have a person over here just doing this one thing for you? Like we're drowning over here." It was hard to say, "No, I'm not going to help." So it is it's a tough dilemma. So
Mhm.
what is your next what's your next big hire? Where are you kind of focusing right now on, hey, this is the next big thing that we want to hire for?
I would say it's a COO. So definitely taking on a person full on for operations. I think that'll definitely help to eliminate a lot of the systems, the procedures, and even like more of an acting like a client retention specialist. I think those are definitely, I'd say, critical pieces to the evolution of the agency and where we're headed. Again, we're in the retention business, making sure that we have existing help with or support with existing clients, while at the same time, how can we drill out operations for setting us to scale from a 1.1 to a 10, 20, $100 million company eventually.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
we did we have a director of client success. And so she's over all the account managers and then she manages all of the churn. Like she answers for
cool.
churn. That's
Hmm.
her main KPI is not having churn. And then we have a director of ops and she is over how fast we can onboard people, figuring out bandwidth. And so yeah, those are two huge hires. It's hard though where we're at. We're kind of where we're stuck, or our big thing that
Hmm.
we're working on. Stuck's the wrong word, but like we're working through things and it's taking longer than I would think that it did. Is that we started building out all these departments, right? So we have director of client success, We have director of the product that we offer, so marketing. We have the director of ops. We have all these other director of biz dev.
Mhm.
So each of them had to build out their departments, and they had to get control over each of those departments and their KPIs. So they would have 3 or 4 numbers that they were in charge of, and then in one main number that they're trying to drive. So like director of business development, sales,
Mhm.
um, director of client success, churn. But they had to learn that took time. So you had to learn it. You had to figure out, okay, how can I press? What do I need more of? What do I need less of? Who do I need to keep? Who do I need to move around? But then what we realized was each of those departments could be winning, but the company losing overall. Make sense? And so
Absolutely.
so it's like, okay, now we need these departments to work across. So it's like, okay, before it was vertical communication, now we need horizontal communication. And here's where it got tricky, where it's not intuitive. This was not intuitive. This is someone taught me this. So we had to go from teaching our team that, hey, your most important team is your team that you're on, to no, your most important team is this leadership team.
Mhm.
And that's not intuitive, right? Because before they've just invested everything into their team. But what we had to help them realize is like, well, you can hit your KPI on your team down there, but this team, if the company shrinks or we lose money or we lose clients over here, or we have to scale back for some reason, we might have to let go of some of that, some of your team. And we don't want to do that. So we had to figure out, as this team up here, this leadership team, the director team, we need to figure out how to win together. That's the most important thing. And then secondly is your team down here, and that was a huge mind shift that we had to do for all of us. And we're
Mhm.
actually working through that right now. We're gonna go next week. We have a leadership summit. We all go meet. We set our goals for next year, and that's something that we're working through right now.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. So when you were doing your director of ops and client, what point were you at in your agency?
Okay, so here's what happened to us. So I'm gonna give a long answer. So we were at like about 250, $300,000 a month in recurring revenue, but we were an absolute not doing things the right way. Our culture wasn't good. There was a lot of things that I didn't understand about business. Just really, it wasn't good, right? But we were successful, but it just wasn't. It wasn't ran the right way. COVID dropped us down by 75%. And then I said, okay, I'm going to just go all in on culture and all in on helping our team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we kept our whole team, even though we lost. We only work with dentists. And almost every single
Wow.
dentist was closed during COVID. So I told the team, I said, hey, let's have a meeting. We're keeping every team member. We're not laying anybody off. I'm taking loans to pay you. Like, so I only have this. I only have like a 3-4 month runway, and I'm just going to update you guys every single week of what's going on. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. If someone says, "Hey, I don't want to be here," that's too risky for me. I totally get it. I might
Mhm.
say that myself, and nobody left. Everybody stayed, and it was hard to get a job at that point, right? And everybody was getting laid off, and we just kept chugging along. Well, in under a year, right around a year from that point, or from COVID, actually, we 5x. And so
Wow.
like everything broke. I broke every single system in the company. And I was the main salesperson at that time. So I just went from almost dying of starvation to now almost dying of, obesity. Like, just I had too much to eat. So we had like 100 and something locations to onboard, and
Wow.
we couldn't onboard them. So we brought in and this is where I made a big mistake. I brought in a COO and a CRO, and they said, no, we need those titles to be able to make this work. So we said, okay. We didn't have directors underneath them yet or anything. And so we brought them in, and they couldn't do it. Like, it was too much for them. And so then they ended up departing.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, so we need to go through each department, get each department, have leaders. So we started below. And if I was going to do it over again, I would do it this way. I would say, okay, this department gets a leader, and this department gets a leader once it needs it, and then this department gets a leader, right? And until then, you would have to lead them, or I was
Mhm.
leading them. And then over time, I'm starting to replace myself with leaders now, so I don't have those direct reports anymore. And then from there, you want to we now where we're at right now is we have all these directors, but then we have C-suite spots open up here, and then we have also other director spots that are open. And so now what we're doing is we're building what we call our dream org chart. So every department builds like, this is how I want to build my org chart. And then what we do is we put that in front of the team. So we
Hmm.
say, look, we have all these opportunities, but to fill these opportunities, we can't hire anybody until we grow. So this is where we need to grow and get better to be able to get to where we want to go. And so we're about to sit down and meet and go reverse engineer 30 million ARR. So we're going to say, okay, our goal is 30 million in annual recurring revenue. Here's all these positions that need to get filled to get there. And then how are we going to do it? And now those teams that were appointed, they now have the bandwidth to actually help us solve the problem. So to answer your question directly, we started to do it around a quarter million
Hmm.
a month in revenue, but I wish I would have done it a little bit earlier, and started bringing those people in. And again, I would have started lower in the department. So like a manager, I would have hired managers first, then directors, then C-suite.
That's amazing, and thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful, not only for myself, but hopefully everyone listening. Um, One thing also I could really respect is the fact that you took risk and you were open and honest with everything to the team. And I think that's where they could even buy in even more. They're like, wow, like normal leaders don't tell me this stuff. Like I'm a worker. I'm not like behind the scenes in the management team or whatever, right? So I think sometimes a lot of the team might not necessarily know what goes on behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
or what those struggles we face as leaders or CEOs or founders and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think our intention is always our team first. And, for me, before I go to bed, like they're the last people I think of every single day, really.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I can always provide for them and their families and also keep them on a road that's successful as a whole and as a group. And, I think that's such a great way to look at it is, hey, we have runway to 4 months. You might very much be with us for the next, leg of our journey. Or if it's too much for you, we totally understand. So I think that's completely, respectful in that sense too.
Yeah, and one thing that popped in my brain as you said that is what happened is after we grew, so we grew, we hired a bunch of people. Now we're at like 40, 50 team members, full-time team members, right?
Awesome.
And then I had to add in all this structure because I realized I couldn't, we broke all the systems. So now I had to come back and we had to add systems and add leaders and add accountability and add
Mhm.
like all this stuff. And some people didn't like it. And they said,
Mhm.
"You changed." And I was like, "Well, yeah, yeah, I've changed a lot. Like I'm not I don't have this flat org chart where everybody I don't have 18 people reporting to me. I have I have 5 people reporting to me. And those 5 people are responsible for 50 people. And
Mhm.
so that was like a huge thing for me to try to cope with that. But what I realized, and this really helped me, is that before it was kind of wild, wild west. I was okay with them doing stuff that was just outside the box. In fact, I encouraged it because I didn't have time to deal with it. But now I'm asking for structure and accountability and these recurring things, and that's not for everybody. And same thing goes like if I how I had explained it was someday, and I talked about this in the team meeting. Someday, we might take this company public. I don't plan on it, but I'm just using this as an illustration.
Yeah,
I might not like that process of bringing in investors and being accountable to a board and all that kind of stuff. Like I may not like that. So that company may not be the best fit for me. And so I understand if the company's not the best fit for you anymore, but this is what we have to do because the tower's built now. I have to build reinforcement or else it might tip over and I don't want that to happen.
absolutely. And I think for the goal shouldn't change. Like for you, it's 30 million ARR, right? The goal
Yeah.
doesn't change. It's the model that changes. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So in the sense of like the model that got you to 10 million, it might very well be different to get you to that 30 million. And I
Yeah.
think that's definitely a huge way of looking at it as well is, you got to keep adapting and evolving with it as you grow.
Yeah. And not everybody, I had to get okay with not everybody is going to be on board with that. Some of our
Hmm.
clients are going to be like, no, I don't like the new model. And some of the team members are not going to like the new model. And then that's okay. Like I had to become okay with that. I wasn't okay with that before. I had to learn, like, okay, we're going to have some churn. When I was the account manager, we didn't have a lot of churn because I was like in it every single day. And it's just, that's the way that it was. And as you grow,
Hmm.
it's not, you got to learn to be okay with that. And that's super hard. It's easy to say, but
Mhm.
it's really hard to do.
I agree. I mean, I even just hearing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally know what you're going through.
So you said you want to try to, your main focus is you're doing social media for personal brands and e-commerce brands. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, I think over time, our client, pocketbook has definitely evolved in terms of who and which industries we serve. At first, it was more like a smorgasbord of everything, right?
Hmm.
We were willing to take on everything and anyone, and really kind of who was there for our opportunity and who was willing to give us that shot. Over the years, I think we've naturally fit in a good category of personal development coaches, personal brands, whether that's real estate agents or you know starting founder who might be an author or whatever that looks like. So I think for us over the years, for what gets me excited, I think it has to come back to why you do stuff. And
Hmm.
for me, what gets me excited every day is to inspire people in their communities, and I think that's really how we leaned into the personal development and the coaches sector. And, I think the cool thing about working with them too is they all have a different message. They all have a
Yeah.
different kind of story to tell, if you will. And I think that's really where we can unleash the creativity on these platforms to really step into who their true voice is and really impact their community to a great level. And then the e-commerce sector, that's really where obviously Shopify and everything's certainly
Yeah.
evolved. We only use Shopify, we only really do e-commerce in that sense. And it's really amazing to work with some amazing products and online e-commerce stores that can really again impact and help communities to a great level.
So what? So like, to put more. I know we've been in here and we've been like super tactical about like inside of your business, but now get a little bit salesy. Like,
Mhm.
what do you actually deliver? What's the
Sure.
product that you're delivering? If I'm an e-commerce or pretend I'm the Gary Bird, I want my social media to blow up. Like, what are you actually delivering to me?
Sure. Yeah. So our core service is social media management. We help everything from A to Z, meaning we can take over the account and manage it, help you create some great content, grow your community, help with the organic and paid ads, really kind of give you a whole service in that sector. And then what helps to complement social media is, of course, website design and development and email marketing. So the team can
Mm.
certainly assist there as well to help give you more of a complete, landscape across the board online. Obviously, nowadays there's so much you can do with social media. There's so much you can do with online marketing, but it's really, I think, how you can, specialize in what you do and how you can really best deliver that best to your clients as well.
And then, how do you get customers? Like, where's your main source of customers right now?
That's a great question too. And, I'm very, very grateful for where we're at, where we've really maybe spent maybe at 500 or $1,000 in ads over 5 years. And
Wow.
a lot of what we do is referral, organic, and we do have a complete outreach team on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and as well as
So
email. So
what does that look like? So what does your outreach
Mhm.
team look like?
So outreach team, there's three people basically outreaching avatar ideal clients that we would work with on Instagram DMs or in LinkedIn, and scheduling booking discovery calls with myself or a sales team to really kind of tap into the value that we can add them. And the other thing that we do too for like maybe bigger clients is we do this thing called an audit style approach, where we will audit their account, we'll show them the value, and we'll literally pitch them. This is what we'll do to your account. And
Oh,
usually
cool.
9 times out of 10, they'll jump on a call and it's really just about closing them there.
Wow. So walk me through that. Like, if you don't mind
Mhm.
sharing it,
Yeah.
what does that look like? So you created a list of avatars and you're DMing them on IG and LinkedIn. What are you saying to them that's getting them to bite right now?
Yeah. There's obviously scripts in place, but I would say the most important part for people to understand when they are sending these scripts out is that open rate is a big thing. So the biggest thing that we want people to do is open the DM, see it, acknowledge it, maybe get a reply, or at least acknowledge that they've received it. And if you ever realize in the DMs, there's actually only 5 words that appear in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sector.
Yep.
So you definitely need to shine. And I think that's a really big indicator with the 5 words of how we do that. So just to give you an example is, hey name, I want to help. Boom. And it's like, oh, I want to help. Boom. So they're gonna open it, they're gonna see it, they're gonna acknowledge it. Sometimes too, we'll even send a video. So I've done a templated video and I'll just say, hey, let's send this out as a video. Because oftentimes that's communicated even better than a scripted message. And also people will read it or watch it at least, and we can see that they've watched it, which is another cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
Um,
cool.
I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in giving value up front. So, giving them even touch points of in that script, maybe we go through their profile and say, hey, you have some really great content. Have you ever tried X?
So are
you
you
know?
shooting so you're shooting a custom video that you're with your face, and then are you shooting it from your account or the company account, or who's
Mhm.
actually who? I know you have other people sending it, but whose face and name is on
Yeah.
the actual send?
Myself, I would be on there and it would be through the company account. And usually it's an evergreen piece of video. So I would give like
Got
a
it.
video thing that's evergreen that they could reuse. But if it's like a legit company that we're like, okay, we're passionate about, we really want to work with them, we're excited about it, I'll literally do a custom thing as well. And then they'll kind of get me on a call also through that way. Or we'll take the audit style approach, which is literally, going through their socials, going through their website, what's missing, what's opportunity, and then really giving those recommendations, because once they see that, they're like, holy smokes, this person put in some work and they're doing it for free. And
Yeah.
not only that, like you can take that and run, but usually it's just enough to keep them interested. So really, here's the game plan that we would do, but do you know how to execute it?
Yeah. That sounds really, so why don't you scale that up? Like, why aren't you dumping more into that?
I think for us, it's resources in terms of capacity of making sure we have a solid base of understanding where we're at with our current clients, while
Yeah.
at the same time taking on select bigger clients for sure to really help us get to that next level. I think that is definitely the next chapter, like you just insinuated, which would be like, we definitely need to be doing more of those audit style approaches and
Yeah.
really kind of going at large to these scale of accounts. The other thing too is we are to a degree, but it's sometimes also the response and reply rate. So hitting them not only on just one platform, but getting in their ear on a different platform too is definitely the game there as well.
What's your like biggest bottleneck right now? Like, what's the thing that's slowing you down that you're trying to work through?
That's a good, very, very good question. I would say the thing that's slowing us down perhaps would be probably finding that who right now in those regards, talent wise. I think it's a slow to process in that sense of finding that person of fit. And then once we do find them, I mean, that's really where I think the puzzle pieces will just align and boom, we're ready for it. But I think definitely a couple, maybe two or three members that were just critically missing, maybe.
Yeah. That was really hard for us, is that realizing that the way we got new customers and the way we were able to do the actual marketing, that we had to become very skilled at attracting team members and then retaining those team members. That is a whole skill set in itself, and it's hard, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do, and it takes a ton of resources. So you have to hire like somebody who's out there actually community, like just like you send DMs for people to reach out and get new customers. Getting that talent is it's really really hard. And then again, you also have to be ready for that talent. So there was times where we'd interview people and we weren't ready for them. They were too far ahead of us.
Mhm.
And it was like, man, finding that right person at the right time. And then what we're working on, what we're trying to get better of, is like, we want to grow people from within. And so helping those people, but you need a whole, again, to grow people and really work with people. It's a whole another ball game. And I think that's probably, if you were going to make me guess, where like your energy, I mean, you said it, that's your biggest bottleneck right now. That's where a lot of your energy is going to go as you grow, because you have to have it. Like, you can't grow without people. And once you figure out, hey, I can get customers and
Mhm.
here's how I do it, then it's like, okay, well, now how do I get the people to support this at scale? Not just the account managers, but like every position. And that's a tough thing, and definitely a learning experience. I had to really level up myself as a person in managing people and all those kind of things, just to turn that corner. And I remember it like it was yesterday. What are your, is there any questions that I didn't hit on that you think that we should have talked about?
I think overall, for personal brands, I think that's a huge element to how
Mm,
people can generate more business for themselves. So if you are an owner, if you're a founder, definitely getting on social, putting yourself out there, you'd be so surprised how much lead opportunity can really funnel right through personal brand. So I think definitely personal brand is a huge element. For me, it's live to inspire. So I love to just inspire others, really through my story, even with what my mission is to set out to inspire others through my business. But I really do believe that anything that you do on social media, whether that's your personal account, it's definitely going to generate some interest or lead to some way somehow to your business. And I would certainly optimize your accounts as well for that. But it's really amazing to see how much emphasis or lack of in some areas for people that personal brand is really unnoticed as well.
Well, it's in it because it's hard, right? So like it's hey, I'm trying to work in the business. So I'm the CEO. I'm working in my business. I barely have any time to work on my business. I don't even have time to work on my marketing. And then you're like personal brand on top of that? Like it's really 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 yeah, it's like it's not that people don't want to, I don't think. I think it's like it's just so far away, right? Like it'd be like if I came to you and I was like, "Hey, stop doing cash based accounting, do accrual because it's better." And you're going to be, it's like, oh, man, are you serious? I have to learn that. I have to hire somebody and then redo all my books and redo my bank and have a different software. Like it's so much that it's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on other things because it's easier. So
Totally.
let's do this. So I've actually just ramped up my personal brand. Have you seen any of my stuff that I've been
Oh
doing?
yeah, absolutely
Okay.
love it. I love your videos
Okay.
too, even just the daily shots. I love them.
Cool. What would you do better, or what would you add or change to it?
You know what? I think the content itself is great. I think it's just about fine tuning some of the optimizations when it comes to uploading. So, finding trending songs, trending hashtags or keywords that you can certainly layer onto the actual uploading process itself. And these are usually like the nitty gritties, the details that
Yeah.
sometimes people don't really get or understand how to do. But I think that's really a huge part. And then I would also just, at the end of the day, probably even suggest trying to do some of the outreach. Maybe even have someone on your team who can even reach out as you. I think that's really another opportunity that can definitely funnel into opportunities there. LinkedIn is huge. Definitely max out on YouTube or on LinkedIn if you haven't. YouTube
So
as well,
question.
actually. I mean,
Okay, so
it's,
question on LinkedIn. So because
mhm,
I've really gotten into LinkedIn, and like
nice.
LinkedIn is kind of like the conservative version of like TikTok is the way I look at it, right? Like it's like all business people, but it's like you can get a lot of growth really really quick. So so
Yep.
vertical videos or horizontal videos on LinkedIn.
I would on LinkedIn, I would do horizontal on LinkedIn, and
Yeah,
I would also tap into Sales Navigator if you haven't tried that yet.
yeah, I've played with that. It's really
Oh,
cool.
that
It's
one's
so powerful.
huge. Yeah, if you're looking to filter someone on LinkedIn, it's an internal tool from LinkedIn created called Sales Navigator that you can literally filter job
Everything.
title, location, yeah, absolutely everything. Send them a scripted
It's
message, and you
amazing
could
for recruiting too.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
and
I
it's
didn't even
80
think about using it from like a sales standpoint, but yeah, I guess you could do that too. I'm in the dental
definitely.
industry, so it's really easy to reach the people that I need to reach, but because we're so niche, but I could
Hmm.
definitely see how you could do that. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
so here's my strategy. So my strategy was I had time during COVID. So I was like, I want to see if I can just grow my TikTok. So I'm just going to post times a day. No, my clients aren't on there. Like a lot of my client avatar isn't on there. So I could kind of do whatever and not have to worry about it. And so I started cranking that out and I was able to actually grow that. And then I started getting so many questions that I was like, okay, I'm going to build a community, which sounds intimidating, but it wasn't that hard because there were so many people that were hungry. And then I started building masterminds because I didn't want to answer questions all the time. That's how this podcast came about. I was like, I
cool,
just want to talk to agency owners once a week, so I'm going to film it and ask questions, right? And then,
awesome.
but then where it where it got tricky was is like, okay, cool. Now I want to scale this, and I want to start posting like 7, 8 times a day. And I was like, yeah, that should be easy. I just 8x what I'm doing now. No, wrong. It was super hard. And I was like, why can't I do this? And I was like, it was really, really, really hard. So now we got a couple people in the right places. We're just now getting to that place. But then not everything's worked out. Like to your point, we don't have all the right hashtags. We're not laying out the content properly in LinkedIn, and we're laying it out similar to Instagram, and that doesn't work as well. And like all those little things, right? So what I said is I don't care about those things right now. I just want to get to the volume. I think the little things are easy. I already know I can do the little things. What I can't do is the volume. The volume's the
Hmm.
hard part. So now that we have the volume, once a month we go back and look, okay, what worked, what didn't, and then improve, and then do that every month. But now we have the volume going at all times. So that way we can keep improving it. What do you think about that?
I absolutely love that. And I think you're actually doing the heavy lifting that a lot of people struggle with. And one thing I also think that blocks people is when the word creating content comes to people, they're like, oh my gosh, creating content. What is it? What, how, where? I think, especially personal brands, look at it more of documenting, like just
Yeah.
document it,
Yep.
just it doesn't even have to go anywhere at the end of the day. It could go to the trash can if it's not good. But at the end of the day, you're documenting content that could very well capture those moments of value that people will see. And then you just trim it up. You get a video editor or you get someone on your team to really help optimize some of that
Yep.
content that you're creating. But really the content creation, because that's how these platforms are served, content, content, content. But really the documentation part is really critical from a personal brand perspective, I think, on really helping people kind of get over that edge of, what to create, when to create, or what, or how. I think just
Yep.
really putting on the camera, lights, camera, action, just record.
That's awesome, man. How if someone wants to reach out to you, and I appreciate that feedback, by the way. Just so you know, I was like, I'm not asking because I'm like, I'm curious because I want to get better, right? So I
Totally
really
happy to
appreciate
help.
that feedback.
No
Um,
problem.
how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about either getting help with their e-commerce or getting their personal brand built out? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone interested, they can definitely book a free discovery call with me at www.getstef.com, GETSTEF.com, or they could visit my profile, GetStef, at GetStef on Instagram, or as well on Millennial Marketing. That's our agency name. They can check
Love
out
that.
on Instagram there. So I think it's a new era for marketing. We're definitely here for you, and can't wait to help serve you and level you guys up online.
Man, your biggest competitor is Gen Z marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly,
No,
exactly.
they're
But
not. They're not. Are they? Actually they're starting to jump into the field a little bit.
they're starting to jump in. The reason for millennial marketing, just to give you a quick viewpoint on it, the millennial demographic actually holds the market for the next 30 years
Yeah.
in terms of size of demographic. So I think we have a little bit of an edge there, but definitely the Gen Zs are coming, and they're very much savvy enough to take us on technology wise too.
Yeah, no, definitely. They grew up with iPads in their hands, pretty much, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting. Awesome, man. Well, you did a great job today. Thanks for coming on, and I look forward to chatting more with you.
Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate you having me on. Take care.